How's it? Welcome to another Big Game Indicating Dogs Q&A. I'm not going to do the big ad thing that I've been doing because we've been losing subscribers on YouTube every time I post one of these, probably because of my brutal, repetitive ad at the start of every Big Game Indicating Dogs Q&A. So, I don't know, there's lots of things I could say here, but I might just get into the Q&A. I've got Vinny offside in this one, just sort of mixing it up in case something comes up, but let's get into it. Jeff, hey mate, I've got a 18-month-old heading dog I've fully trained on the blueprint. I've shot 2 deer with him on clearings while he's been laying at my feet, and he found another 2 I shot without him. Then I've gone and got him to find them. Overall, he's really good in the bush. My issue is he prioritizes ground scent over wind scent. I've seen him pick up a wind scent and win real hard, then go straight back to ground scent he was on, which isn't always leading us into the wind, sometimes downwind. Or he will follow it up, but then pick up ground scent and start following that in a new direction. I probably did more drags than wind when training due to average wind when training. So he's saying in the blueprint we do a lot of scent work with skin, and we do skin drags so we're laying scent on the ground, and we also set the skin up on a pole, taking the wind direction into consideration. We're basically setting up a scent and then strategically setting the dog up on that scent to train the dog to follow up wind and ground scent both as well as each other. And there's a lot to that. There really is. And I've actually read this question before, but I'll read through it so you guys have heard it. But Jeff's experiencing problems with this. So basically his dog is leaning heavy on the ground scent over the wind scent, and this is exactly why we do all our scent work properly in the blueprint. So by the time we get out in the field, our dog knows how to do both properly. And in the blueprint too, we do a lot of talking about and explaining and demonstrating the way dogs use scent, and because there's wind, there's ground, there's scent rafts, they can switch between the two. They can actually wind ground scent, and there can just be like loads and loads of different things going on. And it's as much about training the hunter, the dog handler, the dog owner, the person following the blueprint, or the person training the dog, about how to read their dog and how scent works and all of that, as much as it is about training the dog to do it. The dog knows how to do it. The dog will work it out itself. They're amazing hunters. It's all about getting the man and dog, or man and woman and dog, human and dog, working as a team. So he's saying, I probably did more drags than wind when training due to average wind when training. I'm thinking I need to go back and just do wind scent training, ? Yeah, you definitely do. Also, he's taken me to roughly 10 deer, which we have spooked due to me never really doing a lot of bush stalking or bad wind, etc. I know it's a matter of time, but him prioritizing ground scent stuffs us up a bit, I reckon. Cheers. So there's a lot going on there, but basically Jeff, his dog is or at least he thinks it's the dog's prioritizing ground scent, but there's all this other stuff. He's saying he's where does it say it? He's got this dog, he's fully trained on the blueprint. I've shot 2 deer with him on clearings while he's been laying at my feet, and he found another 2 I shot without him. Then I've gone and got him to find them. So in that situation, so that dog's found 4 deer and you haven't shot one over it stalking. So that dog's never seen that situation when it's winding the deer and you see that and the dog moves in on that. You both move in on together and then you shoot the deer. It hasn't seen that all play out, but what it has seen 4 times by the sound of it, if it's found 4 deer that you've shot in the blueprint, the way we explain the best way to do that is when you shoot the deer, then you take the dog to where the deer was when you shot it and the dog tracks the deer from there. So not always, sometimes the dog will wind scent a dead deer and take you to it on the wind, and that's okay. But I'm guessing the only 4 deer that dog has seen is tracking them, the ones you've shot. So there's an imbalance there. That's about all I can say from that. I would say do more scent work, wind work with the skin. But more importantly as well, if your dog is, you say he's fully trained on the blueprint, that's, what's the frick, I'm having a word block. Subjective. Saying he's fully trained on the blueprint, but you're saying I did more drags than wind scent, so maybe you haven't fully done the wind thing. You know, and fully trained on the blueprint is also following part 11 and 12 and shooting deer over them in all those different ways, using the wind, ground tracking, using the dog to find a long range shot deer and all these different things. So you've still got stuff to go, that's in the blueprint, which is sweet. But that's my advice there. Do your wind work with the skin at home in a training area, but also have another look at part 11 and 12. I believe it's in part 11 where I actually talking about strategizing your hunts and really setting that dog up on the wind, getting high on a bush face with the thermal and the prevailing wind, both pushing that wind up that face and getting above where you think deer are and dropping down on them. Getting in creeks with the wind coming up, because that's the way the wind's blowing or the day's warming up. Getting in a creek with the wind coming down because it's at the end of the day and the air's cooling and it's coming down. And just hunt over the dog. Hunt effectively with the dog there and set your dog up. So basically you shoot a deer with the wind in your favor and your dog sees all that, and do that a couple of times and it should start falling into place. And that's why part 11 and 12 are there on the blueprint, because it's all very well to have a well-trained dog, but you do not have to know how to hunt over them as well. And we show all that in the blueprint. I shoot, I can't remember off the top of my head, 6 or 9 deer or something in the blueprint. I think it's 9. I think it's Print's first 9 deer. And I do a hell of a lot of explaining and breaking it down. And we've also got our free hunting videos on YouTube as well. Big Game Indicating Dogs on YouTube, where I don't know how many deer I've shot with videos with Print talking about wind, keeping him at heel, him tracking, loads of different stuff. And we will be making a lot more there too. So that's it from me, Jeff. Hope that makes sense. Bridget, actually it's Neil using his wife's Facebook account. Hi Paul, I have a 7-month-old GSP that got scared with her first deer skin drag. I've watched the whole series, but the dog and I are up to part 5. She's going really well on the blueprint, a really nice stop and stay, good turns, nice and attentive. I tried my first wind scent training with the deer skin following your video, I cut the wind with her a couple of times until she picked up the smell from about 25 meters out, which is pretty typical, pretty good. She walked in really slowly and sat 1 meter from the skin. Perfect. Perfect. She sat 1 meter from, to finish that sentence, she walked in really slowly and sat 1 meter from the skin. I mean, imagine if you could get a dog, your deer dog, to do that. That's what you want. But then he goes on to say she walked in really slowly and sat 1 meter from the skin without me giving the sit command. Doesn't matter, man. Perfect. I gave her calm praise, picked up the skin and brought it to her to sniff and lick. I don't know if I probably wouldn't have done that, to be honest. And again, this is nitpicking, real fine tuning stuff here. Remember, Neil, in part 11 or 12, I think it's in 11, when it was Prince's second deer. His first deer was that little seeker that I shot in the creek, and we'd had a real pain in the ass of a time getting Prince's first deer. I'd been all over the show. He'd winded. His first indication was this beautiful, perfect find on the wind in the bush. Awesome point. And I pissed around trying to film it and missed my opportunity to shoot it. And then we had this massive succession of like 5 or 6 or 7 hunts or something. We couldn't get it done. He kept doing his job perfectly, but it just didn't come together, as often happens when hunting and the type of stuff that we hunt here in New Zealand in the bush with a dog. And then finally I got to the point, it actually worked out well for the blueprint and print and everything. And I got to the point where it was like, man, I just need to, next deer I see, I don't care if he's pointing it, indicating it, nothing, I'm just going to smack it, and get a dead deer on the ground in front of this dog so he knows what this whole thing's about. And I saw that little, coming back to camp one night, and the wind's side on, so Print couldn't wind it. And here's this little seeker hind standing in the creek, shot that, showed Print. He was all over it, licking it. Took my time, really took my time with it. But that was just like bang. I basically had to take Print to the deer. I was right by the hut, dragged out to the hut clearing, let him spend a bit of time with it. Really took our time. And the next day I went out and he did a real nice wind on that little seeker stag that I spooked. And then it ran off and it stopped. Did the old stop and look back, and I got a shot in on it, but it wasn't that good a shot. Print then tracked it perfectly. This is all in the blueprint. This stuff isn't in any free videos. It's all in the blueprint, and I'm really breaking it down and demonstrating it in there. And I'm filming everything. Print tracking his first wounded deer, and he takes me in perfectly. I shot it. It needed a follow-up shot. Brain shot it at very close quarters, headshot to finish it off, and it was done. And then this deer's laying on the ground, and Prince just standing in there looking at it. I didn't say, hurry up, get in there. I didn't step over him. I didn't grab the deer and drag it to him. I didn't do any of that. I just waited. Just give the whole situation time. And very, very important in certain situations, particularly when you're in that situation where a young dog is doing everything perfect. It's probably perfect. I don't like a dog to be barging on into all sorts of different situations. And I've had this, but people do get this really wrong. I sold a dog once to a guy that a few weeks after I sold it to him, his mate wounded a deer. And they went and they took this dog to where he shot it, and this dog tracked 600 meters, took them all the way up to the deer and sat down. And the guy that I'd sold the dog to, his mate that had wounded a deer that the dog that I'd sold to this guy had just found for him. Never would have found it without the dog. He said, what's wrong with the dog? It's sitting back. It's not like all over the deer, chewing it up, doing whatever, for whatever reason, what you may think you may want a dog to do. An indicating dog's there to find the deer, take you to it. And it's way better if the dog takes you to it and stops than climbs all over it and does whatever you want to do with it. You know, and if anything, as I'm moving in on a deer or a bit of skin or anything, if the dog's trying to bowl in and get too full on, I'm toning that down. I'm like, cut it out. That's in the blueprint too. So, and that mentality starts with the skin work, you know, and giving a dog that time thing when it stops. It may sit down. Even a dog indicating, if a young dog just stops and stands there for ages, give it time. Sometimes you just stand. I think in that thing with print, I stood there for like, I can't remember at least a minute, maybe two. And it's even a minute, while it's not long at all, it actually is. It feels like a long time when, like, your young dog, when it's doing its first thing, it just stops and stands there, and you really want it to be super interested, but actually what is happening right now is perfect. And if you make the wrong move, you can stuff it up. If you say, get in there and get it, you're teaching the dog to want to get in there and get it, which you don't want that with an indicating dog. You want it to indicate. If you try to drag the dog in too fast, or try to drag the deer or the skin to the dog, you're putting too much pressure on the situation. It can be very, very important. Just keep your cool and just give it time. So he goes on to say, I gave her calm praise, picked up the skin and brought it to sniff and lick. She tucked her tail between her legs and tried to run away. I held her on the long line, but she was really pulling and didn't want to be near the skin. I took the skin and her home in the car and put the skin close to her. She sniffed it occasionally, but only from a distance. I'm nervous about doing another skin activity, as I don't want to imprint something negative on her. Any advice would be much appreciated. The skin was from a stag, but shot outside the raw. Okay, so that massive rant I just had about that's a lot of really important stuff on that subject that it's just super important. So anyone listening to this, even if you're not following the blueprint, you may end up if you're training a dog, you may end up in a situation like that. That time thing is super, super important. The other real important thing is that you keep your cool. And it's the same with introduction to gunfire and all that. There's a lot on all of this in the blueprint. Is that your body language and that you keep your cool. As soon as your dog reacts to something and you react to your dog reacting, then your dog reacts to you reacting to it, and you bounce off each other and things just turn to absolute shit instantly. As soon as your dog reacts, you just need to stop, wait, and act and respond very carefully. And the most important thing is that while your dog's unsure, that you're not sort of trying to pull it in saying, good dog, while its body language is all screwed up because its mind space is all screwed up. And you're saying, good dog, it's okay, good dog, because that's praising it for being scared. I've gone over this 100 times. But while we're on the subject, I'll go over it again. Don't praise your dog for being scared of something. Neil goes on to say, okay, crisis averted. This is in another comment a couple of weeks later. Crisis averted, I think. I've tried this 3 times since my original post, including a skin drag this morning, And Neil, and everyone listening, the reason I had that rant about your reaction to your dog's reaction is so important is because Neil says, I'm nervous about doing another skin drag with her. As soon as you're nervous and then you're like, carefully bring the skin out and you go, here dog, here's the skin, and your tone and body language and everything changes, and now you're watching the dog's reaction to the skin, the dog picks up on all of that shit and everything just goes downhill again. It's a downward spiral. So you have to get real confident and calm and relaxed and know everything that you have to do to get through that situation and just attack it confidently. And your body language is really important and knowing how to deal with that. Neil says, crisis averted, I think. I've tried this 3 times since my original post, including a skin drag this morning. She tracks the scent every time and gets to the skin. She is still pretty hesitant within 1 or 2 meters of the skin, but has never ignored the scent or gone in the opposite direction. Perfect. That's perfect, man. You don't need the dog to make love to it when it gets there. She seems to be less scared with each exercise. I'd appreciate any advice, but I think she is getting there. Well, that's really good news, and I think I just sort of blew that whole thing out of the water. Luke, 2 questions if I could. Fire away. How bad is it for the pup to be eating obsessed with cow, horse, rabbit dung, etc.? It's not that good. It's not that good. I talk about this briefly in the blueprint because Print was doing it, and I deal with it briefly and sharply too, and we move on because that's what you want to do with it. I have a 4-month-old GSP that absolutely loves it. I think she is slowly learning to just leave it with disapproval command. Yep, perfect. And just keep her moving. That's exactly what you do. Every single time your dog goes to eat shit, you go, and you've got that long line there and you carry on. That's all it is. And if you're in the unfortunate situation where you have a dog that's obsessed with it and is really, really consistent and persistent with wanting to eat shit, you have to be 10% more consistent and persistent with going and moving on, and just keep calm. Don't get pissed off. Don't get sloppy with it either, and let the dog do it occasionally. You're just diligent, man. You just have to train your dog, and every time it goes to eat it, you go and you move on. Exactly what I did. I actually did that in the there's an example of how I would correct it in the blueprint, because Print was giving it a crack there for a while. And if let's say your dog tries to eat shit 10 times a training session, if you do it perfectly 10 times, say, no, and then let's say out of 10, you get 8 perfect and 2 you're slow or you don't do it, or when you're back home, your mate's there and you start talking to your mate in the driveway and let your pup eat dog shit for half a minute and then you carry on, your pup will keep eating dog shit for like ever. And you'll do those 8 times perfectly, but the other 2 times that you don't do it perfectly, offset those other 8 times. You have to do it every single time, and you'll push through it real quick and easy. That goes for everything too. Next one from Luke, question number 2. Any tips to get the pup to sit faster? She was really good at about, that was my other idea about having you sitting on these, is you could do the time code things, but maybe next time. Anyway, there's my brain trying to do 2 things at once. Any tips to get the pup to sit faster? She was really good at about 3 months. Now we'll stop when given the sit command and tried. I've talked about this so many times. Luke says, after rewatching videos multiple times, I'm given the stop command, stepping in, pushing bum down as gently as possible, and just keep persisting over the coming weeks and see how she goes. That's exactly what you do. Print did that. And then there's, as always in the inner circle, there's a whole heap of comments and people helping Luke out here. And just quick side note here, it is crazy how bang on you guys are with advice in the inner circle. Like, I'll quite often see something pop up and I'll think, oh, I'll write something to that. And then I read a couple of replies and there'll always be like the perfect answer there straight away. It's pretty cool. I guess because everyone's on the same page, we've got heaps of people in there that have followed the blueprint, like got right into it. So it's really cool for that. Long story short, on that sitting one, Luke, is Print did that too, and it's just keep dead calm. Same with the shit eating thing. Dead calm. Repeat the process. Keep repeating it over and over and let the dog come on in time. That's a very, very common one. And it's just a patience thing, man. And that's it. Dustin, hi Paul, loving the blueprint. All is going well so far. I have a slightly off-topic question. Sorry if it's not suitable here. We'll see. I have a mixed breed pup. Mum's a GSP lab and dad's a strong-eyed, proven pest control. I get asked by non-hunting types why use a mixed breed like that. I don't know why. So far she is going great. So the breeder must have a reason. Would you know? Could you point out the different traits from each and what could be achieved by breeding dogs like this? He looks like a hitting dog, but has the GSP spots. I can't see any lab. I know you aren't a breeder, not asking for an in-depth technical review, but just a simple, from your experience in the field, kind of rundown. Okay, what was it? A GSP lab. Mum's a GSP lab. Dad's a strong-eyed heading dog. Well, he just says strong-eyed, which I'm guessing is a heading dog. Yeah, I'm 99% sure it is. So it's quarter GSP, quarter lab, half strong-eyed heading dog. 25, 25, 50. In my experience in the field, I guess the field being dog training and being around dogs and all sorts of stuff. I mean, there's different sides to this. There's my experience in the field is in what those dogs are actually like to hunt over, I guess. I haven't hunted over that exact cross. I've trained and worked with in training and watched them come right through training and into hunting and followed dogs for years of almost every bloomin' cross imaginable, particularly if you're talking about anything along the lines of labs, GSPs, heading dogs, wire hair pointers, Vizslers, and every combination of all of those you can imagine. There is heading dogs now, and I mean they always have been 100% heading dogs, particularly collies, way back in the day before social media and before all this stuff. Heading dogs and working dogs and collies and huntaways and all of that have always been used in hunting, and particularly indicating. Some of the earlier, indicating dogs have been around even longer than what some people think. Some people say, oh, the first indicating dog I heard of was such and such in this year, but there were guys using them way before that and all that sort of thing. But definitely, without a doubt, in the last few years, particularly in the last 1 or 2 years, I'm seeing a lot of heading dog crosses in indicating. I'm sure a lot of that's got to do with big game indicating dogs and the fact that I use them, and there's some other guys out there too with social media. There's a few other guys that use hitting dogs a lot as well. Far more popular than what it was. And this is a huge subject, but the main reason why I think people do the cross is because they don't want to. A lot of people can't bring themselves to just get a purebred hitting dog. I don't know why. If you're doing just big game indicating work, they are very, very good. People want a hitting dog, but they also want a GSP, or he wants a hitting dog, she wants a GSP, or he likes a lab, but he likes GSPs as well, and he knows hitting dogs are good, so I'll just combine them all and I'll have just my dream dog. And sometimes it works out that way. I've seen some really, really good crossbreeds. I really have. I've seen a lot of pretty average ones too, and some that I've seen a couple of lines of particularly hitting dog Vizsla crosses, hitting dog GSP crosses. It can be a very intense cross. But Miko, a dog that I have that you're going to be seeing a lot more of, is a Vizsla hitting dog cross from a very nice line. She's pretty damn intense, eh? Like, compared to Prince, she's an absolute dork. Absolute dork. On the same token, though, amazing dog, just absolutely bursting with talent and potential. It's just off the charts. How much she wants to hunt, the way she'll hunt. It's crazy, and you're going to see it, but it takes a lot of work, man. Way more work and time. And so that's that. There's a bit of a rant on that. Putting the lab in there does a couple of things, and it's pretty common. I actually spoke to a guy yesterday, just random interaction. I had to pick up a gun off him, actually, that I'm taking down the line for a mate. But and when I got there, he was like, "Oh, Paul, I followed your blueprint a while ago with this wire hair," and then he said the wire hair's been intense. He's been good, but he's been really intense. And he said next time I would do a, I can't remember if it was a wire hair lab cross or a hitting dog. I think it might have been a hitting dog lab cross. And he said, yeah, I'd do a hitting dog lab cross just to get a bit of laziness in there. You know, labs are cruisy and lazy. This dog's been too intense, so I want a cruisy, lazy one. Labs are lazy. It's not it's not that clear cut, man. It's just not, you know. And I've seen really bouncy, intense Labradors. I've seen really bouncy, intense hitting dogs. I've seen cruisy GSPs. I'm doing the opposites here. Labs are known for being lazy. I've seen really intense ones. GSPs are known for being full on. I've seen really cruisy ones. The individual is so much more important. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff on my experience, and to sort of counter what is, you could say, is common ideas that are out there. On another sort of level, and all really legitimate stuff, you could cross hitting dogs are great for big game indicating. They're easy to train, fast maturing, very, very healthy breed. They really are. But some hitting dogs can be amazing in the water and actually quite birdy and will retrieve like mad. And I've seen it 100%. But for reliability and just knowing you're going to have a dog that's going to love birds, if you want to use a dog for both, for birds and big game indicating, I wouldn't recommend getting a purebred heading dog. I'm not saying that it couldn't work, and it definitely could, and it could actually be really good, and it could actually be better than a lot of purpose breed dogs, particularly if you don't train that purpose breed dog well. But something like that could be great. A GSP lab heading dog could be great. And even though Miko is quite full on, if you train her right, which I have and I'm going to continue to, and you put the time into it, she has everything in spades that you need to do both incredibly well. Like, she loves the water, goes hard, very birdy, very interested in big game, has the stalk, the point, the retrieve, the speed, like everything. So that's why, and if I was to look at that cross, the GSP, the lab, and the strong-eyed heading dog, I would say I've got the sensibility of a heading dog. I've got if I cross a heading dog with a straight lab, it could beef it up quite a bit and put that lab sort of clumsiness into it. But if I look at a strong-eyed heading dog cross with a lab, cross with a GSP, if I'm looking at it purely optimistically, I'm going to have the sensibility of the heading dog, and I'm going to have the birdiness of the GSP and the lab, but the lab is going to knock the edge off that GSP intensity-wise, but it's not going to be a big, clumsy, slobbery lab either. It's going to have that finesse and stalk and everything of the GSP. So everything's there, and I've seen it all work out too, and it can be incredible. So there's just so much to that whole thing, and you can look at it from so many different angles. But so much of it comes down to the actual particular line. If you've crossed a really crazy GSP with a really crappy heading dog and a crappy lab, it's still going to be crappy. But if you make the right mix, that's why Miko's got so much potential. Her mum was the guy said why I was like, I really like the sound of Miko. He said he used her mum, purebred Vizsla, as an indicating dog, and I said, what's she like? And he said her biggest problem is that she goes in too slow. She's winding a deer, and it's like 200 meters away, and she's stalking all the way in from miles out. That, in heading dog terms, that's extremely weak pull. It's like a very, very strong-eyed heading dog that instead of rushing up to the cattle, it hangs way back and starts stalking from miles away. And the father was a purebred heading dog, small and very strong-eyed. The same thing. So, and then Miko, to counter that out, was the full-on, the opposite of what to choose in the blueprint. And I did that on purpose because I wanted something different for the Pal Miko dog guide and a bit of intensity to work with. And I actually wanted it to be a bit of a challenge and make some mistakes and show you how to fix those and all that sort of thing. So she has all the raw material to do all of those things, but in Miko's case, she has quite a bit of intensity, and that's an example of how getting the right line is important, but then getting the right individual within that line is very important as well. Yeah. Dustin. That's what I just answered. It's a cool little photo of his pup sitting there. Andy. Hi Paul, my German wire-hair pointer Rocco is 11 months now and we are close to finishing the blueprint. I am really... Is that camera recording? Probably not. It's recording on the computer, but we might as well double it up. Yeah. Yeah. Bit of a double backup. Cheers, man. Andy, my German wire-haired pointer Rocco is 11 months now and we are close to finishing the blueprint. I'm really happy with where we're at. He has good range and all the basic commands dialed. Rocco does have an issue that I'd appreciate your advice on though, as I feel like it is our last hurdle before hunting can commence. Firstly, I still have Rocco on the long line most of the time as on lead walking is required in the spots we frequent. On almost every walk lately, Rocco will take off at some point. Oh, I remember reading this one. Rocco will take off at some point. Too quick for me to stand on or grab the long line. If you've got a dog that takes off too quick for you to grab or stand on the long line, you don't let go of the long line. Real simple. I'll continue reading this question. Despite having been going really well up until that point in the walk, I always managed to call him back eventually, however. However, he is clearly ignoring my commands and often runs off 100 meters. It is usually 1 or 2 minutes before I get his attention back. I am not a great whistler, even with the shepherd's whistle. I believe the taking off is sometimes incited by rabbit, pheasant, or quail scent, which are all abundant in almost every reserve I have near home. I am mindful that yelling commands when he is clearly not listening is less than ideal. I am quick to praise him on return and when he is on his way back. Rocco's recall is really quick and instant when I have him under control most of the time. There's that most of the time thing. There's that 80-20 rule that I was talking about before. If you get it right 8 times out of 10, but completely screw it up 2 times out of 10, the 8 times out of 10 doesn't matter, and you'll just stay in the same pattern, repeating and repeating and repeating. I would appreciate your thoughts on this, getting the issue under control. And then he's giving us an update here. Before I read this update, I'm going to go into that. You can't let that happen, man. That's the one of the biggest don'ts. You know, you got some real big deal breakers with a deer dog. One is a dog that just puts its nose down and runs off and doesn't listen. If that goes the wrong way on you with a deer dog, you can be pretty screwed. It could be really difficult. You can always wind it back, and I've done it. You know, that's what I used to spend all my time doing in deer dog boot camps. Is I walked them 4 times a day on the long line, been 100% consistent for a month, not let them get away with it 100%. That dog would just never get away with nothing. And then I'll take them into a private block that's absolutely chock-a-block full of deer and just walk them up on deer using the long line over and over, and just I'd do it for 6 weeks. 6-week deer dog boot camp, and just put a dog that was just absolutely chasing the shit out of everything. I just put it through the ringer for 6 weeks until it just knew that there was no point in even trying to do anything with me. And then I'd try to get the owner to the point where they could continue with that, which often didn't work out. But you can't let your dog run away like that, man. And goes back to, I basically answered this whole question when I stopped back there, and when you said every now and again the dog takes off too fast for me to stand or grab the long line, you can't put the long line down with a dog like that. But you still have to use the long line correctly, and that means keeping the tension out of the long line. I might actually make a free video on that because it's so bloody important. We've got an old couple of long line videos on YouTube about this. Some of them have got like 20, 30,000 views now. Some of our most popular videos. I'm going to make a few more of those, but I'm just writing a note here, tension out of the long line. One of our free videos on YouTube, Big Game Indicating Dogs on YouTube, is about this subject. Super, super important to use it correctly. Even more important to not let your dog run off like that, man. You can't do it. And you're correct in a way when you say, I'm really mindful that yelling commands when he's not listening is less than ideal. And it's less than ideal, but it's more ideal than having a dog that runs off whenever it wants. You say absolutely nothing while it's running away, and then you praise him while he's coming back, and then that just happens over and over again. You need to yell at and again, you shouldn't be in the situation where it's happening, but if it does happen, you want to put a serious amount of pressure on that dog and leave that dog in no doubt that what it's doing is pissing you off and that it's not supposed to do it. Pressure on what you don't want, praise on what you do want. And nothing will work with just praise or just pressure. You always need both. So you don't want that dog chasing stuff out of control, and you need to put pressure on it when it does, even if it means like yelling and running after it until it finally comes back, and then praise it when it's back. But you've got to put pressure on it, man. You can't just go, oh, I shouldn't give my dog a command. There's a contradiction to every rule. There's that rule of don't give your dog a command that it has the opportunity to not listen to, because every time you give your dog a command that it doesn't listen to is teaching it that it doesn't have to listen to you. There's that. And that's why it's so damn important to not set your dog up to fail by being in a position where there's rabbits and quail and all this stuff around, and it may take off, and you don't have the long line in your hand, because now you've put yourself between a rock and a hard place, and you can't manage that situation without breaking one of the golden rules. And that's what good dog training is it's the whole system is so you never break one of those golden rules, you know. And when you look at dog training that way, you sort of turn this way and you go, oh shit, can't do that. Oh, what about, oh shit, I can't do that. And all of a sudden you're like standing back and thinking really damn hard and working it out, you know. And that's what the blueprint is. It's that. That's my thoughts on getting this under control. And Andy said, just an update on this. We have made good progress over the last week. On reflecting, my timing has been off. I think I'd been slow to correct the thought as it popped into his head. Again, correcting the thought, extremely important. We've talked about this a lot, but real quickly for new listeners or whatever. Correcting the thought, so you're watching the dog. Instead of your dog starts sniffing the rabbit, it pulls out of its range a bit, and then it takes off, and then you try to say something. If there's no deer around and your dog starts sniffing something, you can basically correct it straight away. And that's why it's so important to train a hunting dog in the absence of the game that you want it to hunt, so you can correct it on things like that. So basically, but correcting the thought, as soon as that dog's thinking about doing something stupid, you're correcting it. You're not waiting for something stupid to happen. This week, the second I've seen him having a sniff off trail, I've been quick to disapprove and then praise the minute he reverts to walking down the track. He hasn't run off once this week. Still interested to hear your thoughts, Paul, and how you suggest dealing with the scenario once the dog has bolted. Yeah, so everything I just said. And another interesting note there, how he's saying about the dog walking off track. So he's maybe walking the dog off the track, but another thing that we do early on in the blueprint that you can do with your dog at home, even if you're not following the blueprint, is when we're getting an indicating dog started, and it's actually really useful for any type of dog and for loads of reasons in training any type of dog to do anything, is get the dog to walk in front of you, or if you're training it heel, get it beside you or whatever, and walk the same route around the same area so the dog knows where it's going. And it just gives you with this example, once you do it 10 times for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 months, that dog knows where you're going. And then you get to the point, if the dog puts his nose down and goes to turn off, you go, command of disapproval, and you give your walk on command. And if as long as there's no deer around, which there shouldn't be where you're training a deer dog, not until you're hunting, you're correcting that dog. So we're not interested in that. You don't know what it's smelling, but you know it's not a deer. So don't know. Really, that's really important, that whole thing I just laid out there. Roma, we will be breeding our 2-year-old blueprint GSP big game indicating dog and keeping a pup. Is there anything we need to do with the pup prior to the start of the blueprint? Anything we should know about running a mother-daughter combo? Or is it better to have an unrelated dog as a second big game indicating dog? The relation thing, running a mother-daughter, is it better to have an unrelated dog, means absolutely nothing. It's just, no, doesn't matter. Is there anything we need to do with the pup prior to the start of the blueprint at 8 weeks? All I can say there, and this goes for any pup, and this is actually, I had a weird message interaction with someone a while ago on this, and they had a litter of pups, and we were friends on Snapchat, and they kept showing snaps of these GSP pups climbing all over everything and running everywhere and chewing shit up and attacking the cat. They always had the cat with their GSP pups, and these pups were all over the cat and just all over her and all over her lap, and just super, super full on and intense, doing all the stuff that I don't want a pup to be doing after 8 weeks old. I would look at what we do in the blueprint and let pups be pups. Let them have time with their mum. Let them run around with each other. It's a pup, you know. And you don't start training until 8 weeks, none of that. But just keep in mind, like, and other people have the pup sleeping inside. I'm not saying have 2-week-old pups outside in the winter. I'm just saying it just comes back to common sense. And with my pups, for example, the pups that Print and Fly had, she had the pups outside in the garage. I built a box and had heaps of blankets and stuff in there for them. And, you know, they don't do anything for the first 3 or 4 weeks, 5 weeks almost. And then as they got bigger and bigger, they got more room. And then they come out of their box and they had a whole bay in the garage. And then I built a pen that went, a big loop pen that went right out onto the grass. So they could come out in the sun and grass and run around and play with each other and all of that. And as soon as the pups were old enough, I started taking Fly away from them for a couple of hours at a time. And as they got to like 7, approaching 8 weeks old, I would take Fly out for a good couple of hours. So those pups were getting used to mum not being there. We interacted with them. I patted them all the time, picked them up all the time, had other people and kids and, you know, guys and girls and all the different people picking them up and interacting with them. So the pups were used to, well, socialised and used to different people. But then they were also used to just sitting calm, being left on their own, not having mum there all the time, and all of that as well. And I didn't let them do tons of crazy stuff. And this is actually something I've been meaning to make a video on or do something about for ages. I honestly think that that's a big part of the reason why quite often people have a really hard time with certain breeds like GSPs and Vizslers, and why a lot of people, the week 1 and 2 are a lot easier with a heading dog. Not always, but often, is because often when you get a Vizsla pup, it's come from a family in town, and the pups have been just running amok for the first 8 weeks of their lives, and they've never been inside the whole time. They've never been outside. They've never been outside in a pen outside. Mum was with them the whole time. They've been climbing all over kids and people and everyone. It's just been full on. And then you get that pup and start to try and put it through the blueprint, and it's a massive shock to the system, versus getting a heading dog pup off a farmer that has just been outside in the kennel and running. He's probably got a pup pen. Farmers do. They have exactly that, a pup pen with so it's a pen, so the pups have a bit of grass and stuff. There's a box in there for them, and they've grown up outside. They've had a lot of quiet time. They know how to just sit and relax on their own. It's much easier bringing a pup like that into a crate training, kennel training, and a training situation than it is a pup that's just had this like full blast, just carnage first 8 weeks in life. That's my answer to that. And that's all I meant when I sent that person a message. Far out, those pups could be a handful. And yeah. Some people, when I actually avoid talking to people about dogs outside of QnAs and big game indicating dogs and stuff, because I don't know, it just gets weird real quick. Gareth, hi Paul, 2 questions. I have a 6-month-old heading dog pup. She is going really well on the blueprint, apart from I can't get her to stop crapping in her kennel. She craps before I get to her at 6 in the morning, and no matter how many toilet breaks she has, she continues to crap in the kennel. 2, she rebels against the command of disapproval combined with a check on the long line. But if I check and ignore her, followed by praising her, she is perfect. Or if you found something that is perfect, just keep doing that. Is this okay? Yep. Should I just roll with it? Yep. Should I roll with perfect? Yes. Especially if it involves pressure and praise and you're not being too hard on it, and it doesn't involve anything I wouldn't do with my dogs. It's yes. The crap in the kennel thing. Yeah, it's a weird one. She craps before I get to her in the morning. No matter how many toilet breaks she has, she continues to crap in the kennel. That's a weird one, man. Print actually crapped in his kennel more than most dogs, and he still takes the occasional one in his kennel, eh?
Very occasionally.
Really occasionally, yeah. And sometimes it's even when he's not spending that much time in there. Like, he'll be cruising around at home. I think he just takes a crap when he wants to.
When he's ready.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't hold it, and he's just like, I need a crap now, I'm crapping, you know. He never craps inside. And he sleeps inside all night, almost every night at the moment, all the time, fully house trained. But once he's outside in his kennel, it's fair game. So, you know, but it's weird, and I have heard of it very, very, very occasionally when a dog, for whatever reason, like almost holds it until they get in their kennel and they crap in there. And it's a hard one. And the house training thing, and it's because if you're not there to correct it when it happens, it's very, very difficult. And that's how we house train, like in the Pal Miko dog guide, when we actually show how we house train a pup. We did it with Miko. It involves being right there. Excuse me, if they do it, and as soon as they think about doing it again, correcting the thought, we just take them outside, and it actually takes bugger all to train them. With Print, I basically did the same thing later on, or I just waited till he was old enough, and he just sort of knew. He just doesn't go inside. He might have thought about doing it. I saw him like sniffing around, lining up to take a piss, and just get outside, you know.
I had it one night where he took a piss inside.
Did he?
Down in the far room. I woke up to it, you know. Once.
He's never done it with me. Yeah.
He's never done it since. I don't know if he was just like
super busting.
Yeah, he must have. Like,
the amount of things that the dogs will do different when I'm not around is crazy. Like, that's real common too. But, man, yeah, it's a strange one. 6 months old, I probably wouldn't be too bothered about it. Like I said, Print had his moments. He stopped and started. He went through a phase where he just stopped shitting in his kennel and he'd wait and I'd let him out. And he'd go. One thing I would say about that with the Blueprint system is when we were basically putting the long line on the pup in the kennel, and it comes out with the long line on, goes back in with the long line on. And if you're constantly moving and training, you may not be giving your pup the opportunity to take a crap while it's out of the kennel. So you could think about that, give it a bit of time there. Yeah, but it still is a very unusual one. I'd say don't stress out about it too much. One thing I would say is clean it up straight away. As soon as your pup craps in there, get rid of it, hose it out. Is it crapping in its run? Does he say that? Yeah, clean it out. And man, 6 months, it's so young, there's not much you can do and try to tell it off or anything like that. I'll just leave it at that and let us know how you go. Or if she keeps doing it. And we'll try to elaborate on it a bit. Alex, hi Paul, our pup is coming up 5 months old. She's doing really well on the Blueprint. I have 3 kids at home. How do I stop her from jumping and biting? Put a long line on it. With the long line. Exactly with the long line, man. Part 1 of the Blueprint, I introduce Print to Fly with the long line, and I have Fly further away from me than the end of the long line, and I'm holding the long line, and when Print goes to just go flying on in, I stop him with the long line. I would, if you're having a problem with your pup jumping all over jumping and biting on the kids, I would set up a scenario like that with the kids, and I'd hold the end of the long line, and when the pup goes to do it, I'd correct it, stop it. And that's actually a really good demonstration. I think we even say you can, here I'm going to introduce Print to Fly, and you can use this system with kids or introducing your pup to anything, but really, and that's how you do it, man. It's super blooming simple. It's you tie a bit of string around the dog and you stop it from doing it, and pressure on what you don't want, praise on what you do want. So if the pup wants to interact with the kids right, you need to set up that scenario where you can stop the pup from doing it. And in that case, where I'm introducing print to fly, I actually do it non-communicatively. So I don't say no print and pull them back, and then say no print and pull them back, because this is the whole thing with non-communicative training. We do a lot of it in the blueprint. We do it with range and stops and loads of things later on. But non-communicative training is, for me, is training with the long line and using the long line to control the dog or stop it from doing things without me saying anything. And what that actually does is it teaches the dog that if I always say, no, don't do that, no, don't do that, then that leaves it open for the dog to want to do it if I don't say it. But if I do it with non-communicative training with a long line, and if the dog just goes to run and jump on a kid, I just say nothing, and I stop it with a long line, and it tries again, and I stop it, and I tries again, and I stop it. Eventually the dog just stops, and the dog learns that it just doesn't do that in that situation. It's nothing about a command. You just don't jump up on kids. And I stop it with the long line until the dog realizes it can't do it. And then that's pressure on what I don't want, using the long line to apply pressure. And as soon as you see the pup or dog sort of realize, oh, hang on, okay, and you see them go through that awkward moment of, I know I can't run forward, but I want to, and they're sort of stuck in the middle, standing there for a second, thinking about it. As soon as they stop trying to do what you don't want them to do, that's when the kids step in and go, good pup. That's praise on what you do want. And if the pup tries to jump, you go up, and the kid steps back, you pull it back with the long line. As soon as it waits again, and because you want it to just sit nicely, so your kids can pet it, and your kids and your pup or dog can interact together normally. They can run around and play and throw stuff later on, but the first step is just to teach that pup how to interact with kids in a normal way without jumping up and clawing and biting. And that's just that dynamic of reading and timing and pressure and praise, and pressure on what you don't want, praise on what you do want. Put pressure on the pup when it goes to jump up. As soon as it stops, pat it. And sometimes you'll sit there and the pup will try to jump 3 times, and you pull it back 3 times, and then it'll wait for 4 seconds. So you step in, you start to put a hand on it, it starts to jump up within like 2 seconds. So you pull it back down, and the kids step back. This is application and releasing of pressure and praise. I need to make a really good video on this too. I'm just writing a note here. Can you write that down? Application and releasing of pressure and praise video. I think I've already got that in a note somewhere. I've been meaning to make it for ages. It's just this whole thing, guys, is so important. Reading, timing, applying and releasing pressure and praise. So when I talk about applying and releasing pressure and praise, as soon as the pup sits normally, you step in and pat it while it's doing the right thing. As soon as it starts jumping up and being an idiot, if it sits normally for 2 seconds and the kid just gets its hand on it to pat it, and then it starts jumping up and the kid continues to pat it for 2 seconds while it's jumping up, you've just patted the pup for sitting and patted the pup for jumping up, and the two cancel each other out. And the pup learns nothing. The second that pup jumps up, you've got to go up on the long line, and the kid's got to pull its hands away. And then the second the pup, all 4 feet hit the ground, you release all the pressure on the long line, and the kid can step back in. And the second the pup opens his mouth or lifts a paw off the ground, the kid goes back, you pull back. And if you nail that timing, application and releasing of pressure and praise, you'll teach a pup that's been jumping all over kids for 4 months, you'll teach it not to do it in 4 minutes. the beginnings of it. You know, you'll get the idea across, and then you don't do anything with that pup for 2 days, and then it'll sort of try to do it next time. But if you do everything right, it'll pick it up again quicker. If, coming back to that 80-20 rule I was talking about earlier, if you do that perfectly 8 times, and then one time your kids get home from school before you, and they go, no, we're not going to do that thing Dad's doing with us with the long line, let's just let the pup out and it can jump all over us, you go back to square one. But if you do that whole thing properly every time for a little while, it'll just be all sorted. If you do it incorrectly for another few months, you may end up with a pup or dog that does that for the rest of its life. Just kick the table. Dean, hi Paul, any advice about stopping chewing in a GSP lab pup? Dude, I'm guessing that's the name of the pup. Dude has gone through 7 types of beard, including allegedly chew-proof options. Destroyed car seat belts, underfloor insulation, sunglasses after breaking into the house, the cat door, pretty much anything he can get his mouth around. Damage and dog proofing bill is currently sitting around $3,000, so any advice greatly appreciated. And like usual, someone's answered it perfectly. Patrick has said, sounds like too much free time, buy a dog kennel. Buy a dog run and kennel. And that's the answer, man. How old is it? Advice about stopping. Yeah. Nowhere in the blueprint do I show you to give your pup or dog the opportunity to chew seatbelts, sunglasses, cat doors. It just doesn't exist in there. You're not following it. This is why kenneling's so freaking important, guys. It just is. Like, someone asked somewhere a while ago, hey, just started following the blueprint, and it was more of a question to the members of the inner circle than on a Q&A. Hey guys, just got the blueprint. What do you reckon about like following the blueprint without doing the kenneling bit? And there was almost, I can't remember exactly, but there was almost a couple of like, ha, you're dreaming type of thing, because it's so freaking important, eh? For so many reasons. And this is just one of them. And what happens if you give a pup or dog that much freedom early on and it does $3,000 worth of damage, that's $3,000 worth of training your dog to chew stuff. We'll just let that sink in a little bit. It is, and that's why it's so important. And that kenneling and not set in long line work and one-on-one work and not setting your dog up to fail and always setting up to succeed is training your dog to is molding a dog, raising a dog that doesn't know how to chew stuff. You know, and they get to a certain age where they just don't anymore. But if they're in a situation where they're continually chewing stuff, it'll become a habit and they'll chew stuff forever. And now you've got a dog that has to be in a kennel forever. Or you can't let it free around the house and that. Because Print and Miko had a lot of crating and kenneling in the first year of their life, and they never really learned any bad habits. Now Miko's like 18 months old, maybe coming up 2, Print's like 4. And Miko was still a bit chewy. She's just got to the point where she's pretty freaking good now.
Yeah, hasn't done anything for ages.
There's been a few times where, I've just like, dogs have been chilling outside with the door open and coming and going and stuff, and I've like, holy shit, my shoes are on the ground there, my jandals are over there, all this crap's lying around. She hasn't destroyed anything. But she was for ages. Even someone come around and I had the dogs out and they leave their shoes out, I'd say, bring your shoes in, man. Like just don't even, yeah. So it's just that it's and it comes back to those principles. Just don't set a dog up to fail. AJ question, I have a 9-week-old heading dog pup that's just starting out on the blueprint. When I give the puppy some playtime, is it okay to throw a ball for it, or will this chasing of the ball potentially cause issues later on down the track with the dog potentially learning to want to chase? Man, it's so subjective, that, because how long are you doing it, how are you doing it, how much you're planning on doing it, how much you're training, and all that sort of stuff. This comes back to one of those things. If you're following the blueprint and you want to, because some people say, how much time with my kids is okay? Is it all right if my dog sleeps by the cat? Can I throw a ball for my pup? All of these, a million different variable things, is common sense, all within reason. But the golden rule is, if you're following the blueprint properly, doing everything properly, but you're throwing the ball for the pup for 5 minutes a day and all of the training is going well, then it's okay. But if you start to run into trouble and certain things are starting to happen while you throw the ball, the pup won't bring it back and it starts to run around and shake the ball and tear off, and all of a sudden it won't come back, and then your next training session isn't as good, then it's an issue. So I would say, in general, it's potentially not a bad idea. I'll also say, though, that whole thing of not doing it properly and doing it too much and loads of other things can be really freaking bad. When people start playing the whole chasing game. In the Pal Miko Dog Guide, we actually do retrieving training with Miko, super basic. And I'm actually probably going to make like a retrieving boot camp video series with Miko that will be available sometime this year. Probably a deer dog boot camp video series that will be available with her too, because Miko at the moment, she's been hunting with me a couple of times because I've introduced her to the gun, and she's got a really good heel. And I've done a bit of mucking around with her around water and a few obstacles, and she's been running around in the paddocks, and I've made sure that I'm not going to take her hunting and freak her out in the bush. She's not scared of the gun, and I can keep her in behind. And she's come hunting with me and print a couple of times and seen a deer and stuff like that. She's just, like I said, she's just like bursting with, she's going to be a little bit of a handful, but as long as I'm careful and patient, she could be just like ridiculously good at big game indicating, and also a very good bird dog as well, including water retrieves. Loves the water and just a beast in the water. She's real birdie too. But man, I just completely lost myself there, just frothing on how good Miko's going to be. But the 9-week-old, we talk a little bit about that in the Pal Miko Dog Guide, how to do it properly. Actually, we've got a free video on YouTube and Facebook talking about retrieves too. Pretty damn similar stuff. Not quite as structured and only one video. But there is a free video there on YouTube talking about some basic ins and outs of the retrieve, getting a hold going first, introducing steadiness to it, and a few other things. It's actually... the one in the Pal Miko Dog Guide is much better. That's my answer to that, man. It could be fine, but it could also completely screw it up if you do the wrong stuff with it. We can do a tack on of the Pal Miko Dog Guide for a really good deal if you've got the blueprint and not the Pal Miko Dog Guide. If you want to do that and check that out. That's it. Welcome to all the new sign-ups on the blueprint. If you want to check it out, if you want to check out more about the Deer Dog training blueprint, big game indicating dogs. The Deer Dog Training Blueprint is just a 12-part, 15-hour video series where I filmed everything I did training my own dog from start to finish, breaking it all down, explaining everything, principles, the whole lot. 12 months of training, or 10 months of training, and then a few months of hunting, shooting Prince First 9 deer and all of that. BigGameIndicatingDogs.com for that, and you can also check out loads of stuff, loads of posts from people that have followed the blueprints and stuff from me as well at Big Game Indicating Dogs on Instagram and Facebook, and we've got hunting videos on free stuff on YouTube. When I look back at our old training videos on YouTube, they're pretty shabby. They were just free stuff we were making really quickly while we were putting all our energy into the blueprint. The blueprint is very different to any of our free stuff. It's extremely structured, very serious, a lot of scripted stuff in there, a lot of really seriously broken down, explained, demonstrated, step by step. It's pretty full on. That's it. Later.